it must be tough to be an authoritarian. You promise everybody the world to get elected. Prices will go down on day one. No more inflation. We're going to end Russia's war on Ukraine. The world's going to respect us. And then you get in, and even though you inherit an economy from your predecessor that's described as the envy of the world by The Economist magazine, you crash everything. The economy today is shrinking. The stock market is sinking. Inflation is soaring. $7 trillion in American retirements and wealth has been destroyed. You've plunged us with your imbecilic tariffs into a trade war with the whole world, except, of course, for your bosom buddies in Russia. So now, only 100 days in, with 100 unforced policy blunders, you're the most unpopular president at this point in your presidency in more than 80 years. Barack Obama stood at 69% in the polls. Ronald Reagan was at 73% in the polls. Truman was 87%, and Franklin D. Roosevelt 68%, but Donald Trump is at 39%, the lowest 100-day approval rating since polling began. He controlled the agenda for 100 days. He controlled the House, he controlled the Senate, he's got everything going for him, and his numbers are in the gutter. So now he reaches back into the authoritarian playbook. Go back and please the wealthiest people and corporations in the country. House Republicans want to cut hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid, food assistance for mothers and children, veterans benefits, Meals on Wheels, Head Start, any programs that help actual people, all in order to pay for another gargantuan tax break for the president's billionaire benefactors. And here in the Judiciary Committee, our good friends want to help Donald Trump use his power in violation of the Constitution that we are all sworn to uphold and defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. Every day, the administration uses immigration enforcement as a template to erode constitutional rights and liberties. They round up people in the street and disappear them to the torture prison of a foreign dictator without 1 minute of due process, sweeping up completely innocent people who have no criminal record and no criminal charges, in the midst of other people who may have criminal records and criminal charges and should stand prosecution for them if they do have charges against them. They're stripping college and graduate students at American universities of their visas for writing op-eds that the administration disagrees with. They invoke emergency wartime powers like the Alien Enemies Act to fight a military invasion at the border while telling us that the border has never been safer than it is right now. My colleagues say all these measures are necessary to deport gang members, violent criminals, the worst of the worst. But they're not targeting the worst of the worst. They're arresting judges now. They're using federal agents to round up law-abiding members of the community with no criminal records, parents of American children, husbands and wives of American spouses, people who have not been shown to pose any public safety threat at all. They're breaking into cars to arrest mothers as their children's watch in terror. They're arresting people who are coming in for their citizenship interviews. They're staking out people's homes and trolling through IRS taxpayer data in search of tax-paying people to deport. Look, we know how to remove people from the country who should not be here. President Biden's administration did that. We know how to do it legally, consistent with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. But the Trump administration has discarded the rule of law. If he can sweep non-citizens off the street and fly them to a torturer's prison in El Salvador with no due process, he can do it to citizens too. Because if there's no due process, if there's no fair hearing, you've got no opportunity to object. And indeed, several American citizen children, including one with cancer, were flown to Honduras last week with no due process, as a Trump-appointed judge in Louisiana found. Now the courts have issued more than 95 preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders against this reign of lawlessness. But Republicans want to enable President Trump to keep going. This Judiciary Committee bill seeks to strip the courts of their power to hold an administration in contempt when the president violates explicit judicial court orders. And it doesn't stop there. While they try to defund the courts, they're forking over an astonishing $81 billion to the administration for more of these immigration roundups. The legislation includes a whopping $45 billion for ICE on top of its annual budget of $9 billion for family and adult detention centers alone. This bill is a blank check to the administration to do more of what we've already seen. And to make matters worse, as they race to spend more than $81 additional billion on this, Trump's own DOJ is terminating hundreds of millions of dollars in existing grants. They're cutting funding for county, state, and local law enforcement. They're cutting funding for opioid addiction treatment programs. They're cutting funding for crime prevention, and they're cutting funding for victims of rape, sexual assault, and violent crimes. The grants being cut support local police in solving and preventing crime. They help the survivors of abuse and assault navigate the legal system, and yet they're being wiped out by the Department of Justice. They're also trying to handcuff the agencies that work to make sure our food and drugs are safe and our air and water are clean. The REINS Act is buried in here. It would prevent the government from enforcing our civil rights, protecting workplace safety, and guarding against misconduct by banks. It would require both houses of Congress and the president to approve every major rule from our agencies to take effect, virtually guaranteeing no effective regulatory action on any subject. They've also tucked the Midnight Rules Relief Act in here, which would allow Republicans to bundle hundreds of regulations all together into a single package and vote them down on a single jumbo resolution, which would be used to hide the most destructive deregulatory votes among dozens of others, completely burying it in darkness. Look, this version of an authoritarian America is not what the American people want. Please take note, this is why Donald Trump's polling numbers are in the gutter and an historic low. This is not what the American people are looking for. We urge our colleagues to walk back from the brink here to support many amendments we plan to offer today that will save us money, that will actually address the real problems of the country, and that will protect the constitutional rights and freedoms that we cherish so much in America. This is a test. Are we going to stand up for the majority of the American people, for our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and the freedoms we fought for, or are we going to stand with a president who wants to throw it all away? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
House Republicans have spent the last 3 months insisting that they are the party of working people, that they care about the struggles of working people. And now they have control of the House, they have control of the Senate, they have control of the White House, and they actually could be doing something about it. And yet, instead of passing legislation to make life easier and more affordable, they are doing the opposite. This bill is a betrayal of working people. It's a betrayal of the middle class. So let's start with the overall plan here. Republicans are proposing a massive cut to social services in this country, services that my constituents in Vermont rely on. I'm thinking about the nearly 164,000 Vermonters on Medicaid who are at risk of losing their health care. The Republican legislation means parents and grandparents who rely on Medicaid for long-term care and nursing homes for their family members. They're going to have that rug pulled out from under them. It means that rural hospitals, not just in Vermont, but in all of your rural districts, are going to close too. It's just a math problem. Medicaid goes away, rural hospitals close. The Republican majority and Donald Trump want to kick working families to the curb and give people who don't need another massive tax break another leg up. The wealthiest 1% in this country do not need more advantages. They have plenty. These cuts are a crystal clear indication of where your priorities lie. Now let's talk about what is on the agenda for this committee specifically. With this slice of the reconciliation plan, Judiciary Republicans will be doubling down on Trump's lawlessness and cruel immigration policies, fueling Trump's attacks on our independent judiciary and making it easier for big businesses to get away with price gouging and making it more expensive for regular people to survive. Today, my Republican colleagues are voting for sky-high fees for folks who are just trying to comply with immigration laws. Does anyone really think that somebody who is fleeing to our country for relief as a refugee can afford hundreds or thousands of dollars to seek asylum or their day in court. It's nonsense, and you know it. And with these fees leveraged on those who can least afford it, Republicans are dedicating billions of dollars to hire and empower an immigration enforcement reign of terror. They want to greenlight more masked agents, more hooded people, more unmarked cars, yanking people off the streets, deporting them without any due process. This is America. This is what actually sets us apart from people in the rest of the world, is due process. You can laugh all you want, but if we don't stand up for due process, we are not the United States of America anymore. The bill in front of us will allow Republicans to further insulate this administration when it flagrantly violates the law and the Constitution, making it harder for courts to stop illegal actions. My Republican colleagues are once again using their position, instead of helping working people, they're using their position to attack judges, to attack the very foundations of what makes us Americans. And you're trying to shutter the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, making it harder for us to enforce our antitrust laws. Let's talk about fairness. Let's talk about competition. Let's talk about all my small businesses who just want a fair shot. Why would you go after the FTC and make it harder for small businesses to survive in this landscape? You all talk about competition. You all talk about a healthy process in this country, to have competition, to have a healthy economy, and then you go after the FTC. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't pass the straight face test. It's all more of the same in here. You are not looking out for working people. You are not standing up for small businesses. You're not standing up for rural America. You're not standing up for our rural hospitals. You're not standing up for the people who desperately need Medicaid in order to get basic health care. When I vote no on this Republican budget, I'm going to be thinking of all the working people in Vermont who sent me here to work on behalf of them, not big corporations, not authoritarians who are would-be dictators, to work on behalf of them. And I will be thinking of all of the immigrants, those who have become part of the fabric of Vermont's economy and our communities, who are heartlessly being attacked by my Republican colleagues today. I yield back.